The email attachment icon blinked on my laptop screen as the message subject line burned into my vision. Confidential, final evidence package, M. Voss case. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly despite my resolve. 13 years of meticulous planning had led to this moment. The office around me continued its normal rhythm. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, colleagues discussing cases. But I heard it all as if underwater, distant and muffled. The familiar weight of my father's gold fountain pen pressed against my palm, the one he'd used to sign business deals worth millions, now repurposed as my instrument of justice. As I clicked send, confirming dispatch of the evidence package to District Attorney Connors, I unconsciously traced the silver line running from the corner of my eye to my jaw. In the reflection of my darkened screen, I could see it catch the light, a permanent reminder etched into my skin by the man who should have protected me. My name is Rachel. I'm 28 and a financial crimes investigator. This is the story of how I turned my father's weapons against him. The scar had been my 16th birthday gift from him. I was making breakfast in our kitchen, French toast, the only meal I knew he couldn't criticize. He'd stumbled in, already drunk despite the early hour, reaching past me for coffee. His hand had knocked the knife from the counter. As I'd instinctively moved to catch it, the blade had sliced cleanly across my cheek. "Stupid girl," he'd muttered, stepping over me as I fell to the floor. "Look what you made me do." That morning, in the emergency room, I'd sat silent while Frederick Voss, self-made millionaire and philanthropist, explained to the doctor how clumsy his daughter was. The doctor had nodded sympathetically, eyes deliberately avoiding mine. People always believed my father. His donations funded half the hospital wing we sat in. His company provided jobs to thousands in our community. Who would believe that behind his perfect public image lurked a monster who had terrorized his only child since my mother died giving birth to me? "It was your fault," he'd told me on my 10th birthday, the first time he'd hit me hard enough to leave a bruise that makeup couldn't hide. "She was perfect until you killed her." For years, I'd perfected the art of invisibility in my own home, learning which floorboards wouldn't creak, how to interpret his moods from the sound of his footsteps, how to craft plausible explanations for teachers who noticed my absences or flinches. But the scar changed everything. It couldn't be hidden completely. It marked me, permanently and visibly. In the months after it healed, I began to notice something peculiar, how people's eyes would flick to it, then quickly away, how they'd accept any explanation rather than consider the uncomfortable truth. Their discomfort made them complicit. More importantly, I noticed something new in my father's eyes when he looked at me. Not remorse, he wasn't capable of that, but wariness. He'd made a mistake by marking me in a way that couldn't be concealed. For the first time, I realized he was afraid of exposure. That's when I began to plan. I'd always been an excellent student, academic achievement being one of the few things that occasionally stayed my father's hand. But now I became exceptional. I graduated high school a year early, securing a full scholarship to Williams College. My father was furious I'd applied without his knowledge, but the local newspaper wanted to interview us both. He couldn't refuse without raising questions. "Such a supportive father," the reporter gushed during our interview. "You must be so proud of your daughter." "Rachel is my greatest joy," he said, his arm around my shoulders, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. The reporter's eyes flicked to my scar. "And what happened?" "Childhood accident," my father said smoothly. "She was climbing a tree, fell onto a fence." I smiled and nodded the dutiful daughter, but as the reporter left, I caught my father watching me in the hallway mirror, uncertainty flashing across his face. He was realizing what I already knew. Soon I would be beyond his daily control with a story I could tell. "If you ever breathe a word against me," he said that night, voice low and dangerous, "I'll destroy you. Who do you think people will believe, me or a disturbed girl with a history of self-harm?" It was the first time he'd suggested I'd hurt myself. The casual introduction of this new lie told me he'd use it if necessary. "I would never say anything against you, Father," I replied, eyes downcast. "You're all I have." At Williams, I majored in finance with a minor in computer science. Between classes, I researched everything about Voss Holdings, the real estate empire my father had built by buying working-class neighborhoods and converting them into luxury properties. His company had a reputation for aggressive tactics and political connections that somehow always resulted in favorable zoning changes. I set up news alerts for mentions of his properties. I joined campus activist groups focused on housing justice, careful to use a different name. I built a network of friends who never met my father, never came to my childhood home, never saw the mask I wore in his presence. In my junior year, I interned at a small forensic accounting firm. My supervisor, impressed with my attention to detail, gave me increasingly complex assignments. I learned how to follow money trails, how to spot discrepancies in financial records, how shell companies operated. "You have a natural talent for this," she told me. "Most people can't see the patterns." But I'd been seeing patterns my whole life, in my father's moods, in the excuses people made for him, in the system that protected men like him. When I graduated summa cum laude, my father insisted on hosting an elaborate party at his penthouse. It had been almost 4 years since I'd lived under his roof. In that time, I'd returned for obligatory holidays and occasional Sunday dinners, maintaining the fiction of a normal father-daughter relationship while collecting information, building my case, piece by piece. "I've arranged a position for you at Kellerman and Burke," he announced at the party, naming a prestigious financial firm where several of his associates worked. "Junior analyst. You start next month." It wasn't a suggestion. It was him reasserting control, placing me where he could monitor me through his network. "Actually," I said, smiling pleasantly for the benefit of the guests, "I've accepted a position with the state attorney's office in the financial crimes division." "You never mentioned applying there." "Didn't I? It must have slipped my mind." His eyes hardened, but his smile remained fixed. "We'll discuss this later." Later that night, after the guests had gone, he cornered me in the kitchen. "You will call them tomorrow and decline the position." "No," I said, the single word hanging between us like a drawn blade. He moved to slap me, pure reflex, but I caught his wrist. 4 years of martial arts training had changed the physical dynamic between us. I wasn't the frightened child anymore. "Don't," I said quietly. "I'm not living under your roof anymore. You don't get to touch me." Confusion crossed his face, then anger, then something close to fear. "What happened to you at that school?" "I grew up. I learned things. About business. About family dynamics. About you." He stepped back, reassessing. My father had always been good at adapting his tactics. "Rachel, I only want what's best for you." "My talents," I interrupted, "are exactly where they need to be." I left without further explanation. Let him wonder, let him worry. For the next 2 years, I built my reputation at the state attorney's office as methodical, persistent, and unassuming. I took on extra work, delivered solid results, and absorbed every detail when cases connected to my father or his associates crossed my desk, noting patterns of behavior, names of shell companies, political connections. During this time, my father made multiple attempts to pressure me into leaving my job, alternating between veiled threats, guilt trips about family loyalty, and even a brief, unconvincing performance as a concerned parent. When none of that worked, he tried to interfere directly, calling in favors with people who could influence my career. What he didn't know was that I had anticipated this and secured protection from a higher authority. District Attorney Helen Connors had taken an interest in my work and unusual background. In a private meeting early in my tenure, I had told her a carefully calibrated version of the truth. "My father is politically connected and doesn't approve of my career choice," I explained. "He may try to interfere." "Frederick Voss," she said, nodding. "I know him by reputation. Demanding man." I touched my scar reflexively. "You could say that." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Rachel, is there something more I should know?" I held her gaze. "Not yet, but if there ever is, you'll be the first person I call." She studied me for a long moment. "My door is always open." With D.A. Connors as my shield, my father's attempts to derail my career failed. Meanwhile, I was building a case file that would eventually become his undoing. Evidence of tax fraud, bribery of city officials, and violations of environmental regulations. The most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Oliver Thompson, my father's longtime executive assistant, contacted me one evening asking to meet at a small coffee shop far from the city center. Oliver had been with Voss Holdings for 15 years. He'd seen me grow up, had witnessed my father's parenting up close. I'd always sensed his discomfort, noticed how he would find small ways to help me, warning me of my father's moods, occasionally creating distractions when tensions rose. "I'm retiring next month," he told me, sliding a USB drive across the table. "Your father doesn't know yet." "What's this?" I asked, though I already suspected. "Insurance," he said simply. "I've kept copies of certain documents over the years, things that troubled me." He nodded toward my scar. "I was there that day. I brought over contract papers for him to sign. I heard him in the kitchen with you. I heard you fall. I did nothing." His voice broke slightly. "I've lived with that every day since." "Why now?" I asked. "Because you're strong enough now to finish what you've started, and because I'm dying. Cancer? 6 months? Maybe less?" I covered his hand with mine. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Just make it count." The USB drive contained financial records, emails, and recorded conversations, spanning more than a decade. It was the missing piece I needed. Clear evidence of a pattern of criminal behavior that couldn't be explained away as accounting errors or misunderstandings. 2 weeks later, I presented my findings to D.A. Connors. She listened without interruption as I laid out the case against Frederick Voss and his network of corrupt officials and business partners. "This is exceptional work," she said when I finished. "But I have to ask, why didn't you recuse yourself, given your relationship to the primary subject?" "Because no one else would have seen the pattern," I said honestly. "No one else had reason to look." She nodded slowly. "And the personal aspect. I need to know if this is justice you're after, or revenge." I touched my scar, a habit I'd never been able to break. Can it be both? The law doesn't care about motives, only facts. The facts are all here. After a long moment, she nodded. "We'll proceed, but you understand you can't be the prosecutor on this case." "I never expected to be. I just needed to be the one to build it." The day of my father's arrest, I stood in the DA's office watching the operation unfold through live updates from the field team. I'd recused myself officially, but Connors had allowed me to witness the culmination of my work. "Target is secure," came the voice over the radio. "Frederick Voss in custody without incident." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, a strange hollowness filled me. The weight of a lifetime's fear and anger suddenly lifted, leaving nothing in its place. My father made bail within hours, posting the multi-million-dollar amount through his attorneys. That evening, he called me on my personal cell phone. "I need to see you," he said without preamble. "I don't think that's appropriate, given the circumstances." "Rachel." His voice held an unfamiliar note, something almost like pleading. "Please." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a restaurant downtown, where the public setting would ensure civility. He was already seated when I arrived, looking older than I remembered. The invincible giant of my childhood had been replaced by a man in his 60s, gray-haired and diminished. "You did this," he said as I sat down. Not a question. I met his gaze steadily. "The evidence did this. Evidence you spent years gathering. Against your own father." His voice rose slightly. "Why? What did I ever do to deserve this kind of betrayal?" I stared at him, momentarily speechless. Then slowly, I traced my finger along my scar. "That?" he scoffed. "An accident. One mistake in a lifetime of providing for you, protecting you." "Protecting me?" I kept my voice level with effort. "Is that what you call what you did to me?" He leaned forward, eyes cold. "No one will believe you, your word against mine." "It's not just my word anymore," I said quietly. "Oliver kept records. Dates, times, photographs of injuries. He documented everything." The color drained from his face. "Oliver wouldn't. He already has, and there's more. The neighbors who heard, the teachers who suspected, the housekeeper who found bloody tissues hidden in my room, people who stayed silent for years because they were afraid of you or because they didn't want to get involved. They're talking now. His hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. I'll destroy you. I still have friends. Powerful friends. Not anymore, I said, rising from my chair. Your friends are being indicted alongside you. Your empire is being dismantled. Your reputation is in tatters. You have nothing left to threaten me with. As I walked away, he called after me, loud enough for nearby diners to hear. You're just like her, you know. Your mother would have done the same thing, twisted the knife and walked away. I stopped, turned back. Thank you, I said. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. The trial lasted 6 weeks. I attended every day, sitting silently in the back of the courtroom. My father never looked at me, not once. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, witness testimony, Oliver's meticulous documentation. Even my father's expensive legal team couldn't overcome the sheer volume of incriminating material. When the domestic abuse allegations became public midway through the trial, my father's remaining supporters fell away. Photographs of my injuries over the years, medical records with suspicious explanations, testimony from household staff. It all painted a picture of sustained terror that even his most loyal friends couldn't defend. The jury deliberated for less than 2 days before returning guilty verdicts on 14 of the 18 counts. The judge sentenced him to 22 years, no possibility of parole for at least 15. As they led him away, my father finally looked at me. There was no remorse in his eyes, only a cold, impotent rage. I held his gaze until he was gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions about my father's crimes and my feelings about the verdict. I touched my scar one last time. Justice was served, I said simply, and walked away. Oliver died 3 months later. I was with him at the end, holding his hand as he slipped away. You did good, kid, he whispered. I like to think he was at peace. I left the state attorney's office soon after the trial. My work there was done. Instead, I established a foundation using my portion of the assets seized from Voss Holdings, assets that hadn't been tainted by illegal activity. The Rachel Manning Foundation, I took my mother's maiden name, provides legal support and housing assistance to survivors of domestic abuse. We focus particularly on cases involving powerful abusers, people whose money and connections have allowed them to escape consequences. Last year, 5 years after the trial, I visited my father in prison. Not for reconciliation. Some wounds can't be healed. Some actions can't be forgiven. I went because I needed him to see me, truly see me as I am now, strong, whole, free from his shadow. Why did you really come? He asked, his voice rough from disuse. To thank you, I said. Confusion crossed his face. For what? For the scar. I touched my cheek. Every morning I look in the mirror and see it, and it reminds me that I survived you, that I won. He had no answer for that. Sometimes people ask if I'll have the scar removed now that I can afford the best cosmetic surgeons. I always say no. Some marks should remain visible, as reminders of where we've been and what we've overcome. The mirror shows me many things these days. A woman who built a case that brought down a criminal, a daughter who finally escaped her father's control, a survivor who turned her pain into purpose. But most importantly, it shows me someone my mother might have been proud of. And when the light catches my scar just right, I like to think it's her, reaching across time to tell me she sees me too. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.